Hi everybody and welcome to Charlie's podcast here in Sotogrande. My guest today is myself. And the reason is that I wish to do this monologue as the subject matter, the EUC, Entidad Urbanística de Conservación, which is the community body that runs the place. I've invited them on, and for policy reasons, they say they can't come on to the podcast, which is a shame because many residents have actually asked me to invite them along. They'd like to know about the security, about the gardening, about how the whole thing is run. So sadly, they're not here. They can't be here for their own reasons, and I respect that, of course. But I'll have a go at seeing what I think about it and see if I can explain a little bit about the community and how it is. When anybody buys a property here in Sotogrande, people ask me, what are the running costs? Obviously, you have your utilities, your water, your electricity, your telephone, your internet and all that, gas, whatever your heating system might be. And that is understood quite clearly. But there are three charges that everybody has to pay on an annual basis, sometimes quarterly, sometimes on a monthly basis, and the EB, which is one of them, is on an annual basis. So you have IBI, which is Impuestos de Bienes Inmobiliarios, and that is basically your property tax, and your property tax which you pay to the local town hall. And that's the money that they collect from the entire municipality to basically run the municipality, looking after the roads, looking after all the public parts of it. And a little bit, I suppose, they put into Sotogrande. I'm not sure exactly how that works. Then the other charge you have is a very small charge, which is called, I call it garbage taken away, so your dustman, who comes in Sotogrande daily. My daughter says she lives in London, she gets it maybe twice a week or something, but twice a fortnight. So it's... here it's a very good service, and we all pay about 400 euros a year. So it's not damaging the bank account, but it's a very good service to have your refuse taken away daily. The third charge that one has is the community charge. It's the charge of the money that we pay to the EUC. Sotogrande is a residential resort, as we all know, but the roads actually belong to the town hall. But we do have gates, we have security barriers, watching people coming in and out. So there's an element of differential, if you like, from the rest of the municipality in that sense. Money goes in to cover a whole number of things, which in a community, particularly those who have lived in America will understand. Basically, the more money you put in, the better the service you'll get. And I'll get into the numbers in a minute. But I was a little bit disappointed when, not so long ago, I had a very good client he's from America, actually German descent, but coming to see Sotogrande because he wanted to have a property in Europe, but also enjoy the weather he'd been enjoying in America. And I asked him for some feedback once he'd left, because I didn't hear from him for about a week or so. And I'm just going to read what he what he wrote to me. To be very open with you, since you asked for our honest feedback, here it is. The overall resort maintenance and upkeeping, the streets, the common garden areas, were unexpectedly disappointing, with some more focus on overall resort maintenance needed, and that could make it look more inviting and convincing. So, not an A plus in the sense of how that person perceived the resort, having read about it, having obviously perused a number of websites and that sort of thing. Very disappointed, and sadly, he's probably not going to come back to buy. And I think what we have in Sotogrande, because of its age, 60 plus years, is we have a whole variety of people who have come here at different times, different decades, and have different expectations. So somebody who bought in the 60s and 70s, 80s, really was a second home. This was a second home for them. It was a holiday home for them. And when they weren't here, they weren't perhaps too preoccupied with what was going on in the resort in terms of maintenance and everything else. To this day, in June, July, we see a lot of activity going on. We see the roads being looked after a bit better. We see new lines on the road, so they'll be repainted, all the white lines that you have on the road. We see the gardeners, cutting the hedges, all in anticipation really of the summer, when the resort is at its peak in the sense of visitors, and therefore the ones that are looking at the place. And once August has gone, suddenly it's maybe people go on holiday as well, which is only fair, but the maintenance seems to sort of slow down a little bit. And the new people coming in who are going to perhaps use this as a primary residence, or if not certainly a highly used secondary residence, and by that I mean 6 months, something like that, really expect to have the whole resort feeling a lot more luxurious, in the sense that that's what they came for in many ways, many, and something that is in parallel to their property, which is most likely to be high-end, quite expensive. Therefore, they want the environment to look and feel the same. This is not a criticism of the EUC. It's, I suppose, a critique, yes, and something which, I think there's a lot of scope for improvement in anything we do, but particularly for those coming here wanting a place in Sotogrande. They expect to have the standard that exists around them to be as high as the one that they may be investing personally into their own home. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what the EUC actually does and how much it actually spends. There's a really good website where you can see everything that goes on. It is totally transparent, and it's where I got the information I have in front of me. I have the 2026 budget overview here, where and I'll put this into the, you'll be able to see on the screen, I hope, and a link. The total budget for the year will be in 26, 5.7 million euros, up from 5.5, so a nearly 4% increase on the budget. The major spending categories basically are security, with nearly 2%, 38% of the total expenditure going into the security here. Street maintenance is the next big bucket, and that is about 1 million euros, 18%. The next largest one would be gardening, 15%, and those are the common garden areas that you see in and around the resort. The next one is green zone maintenance, and I thought, what's that difference to gardening? Well, the green zone maintenance are green zones that exist all over the resort, in between properties, where I understand all this, the piping goes, the sewage work goes, all that sort of thing. So they need access to that, and that must be kept clean, clear. We don't want them to overgrow. We don't want accidents with fire and that sort of thing. So that's where it is. And there's another one called refuse collection of 9%, which is €500,000 euros, which I believe is different to the one that we pay for from the town hall. That must be just collection of everything that we have in terms of greenery and stuff to take out of the place. So those are the main buckets. And you might ask yourself, how is the 5.7 million, where does it come from? Well, in the website, you also find here the percentage of participation of the budget. In other words, it's a long list of different places, establishments, if you like, that do that. There's a thing called the Parques 1 and Parques 2, which are basically the villas that have the individual plots. Okay, and they actually take a huge chunk of the lot. Parques 1 is 32%, Parques 2 is 31% with 2 million and 2,300,000. So those are each individual villa. I understand that the money collected is based on the size of the plot that you own. So if you have a 1,000-meter plot, which there aren't any because they're bigger than that, but say a 2,000 square meter plot, you'd be paying around 70 cents per meter square per annum. So 1,000 square meters would be 750 euros. 2,000 square meters would be double that, so 1,500 square meters. But then who else is here? Well, just going down, glancing, you got La Loma, which is obviously the townhouses there. You have El Casar, which is down the houses down the villa. You have Galeria Spaniagua, where I'm sitting right here, so obviously they have to pay their share. You have Los Granados across the road there. You have Jardines de Sotogrande, Royal Golf, El Polo. You have Valderrama, Valgrande, Valderrama. The golf courses are both in here as well. So everybody that has something on Sotogrande would be contributing to the grand total of 5.7. But the big chunks, as I said, would be the villas individually in 1 and 2, Los Granados, which is big, El Polo, which is big. You got another one, Hacienda Valderrama, Altos de Valderrama, which is big, International School, which is question mark. I thought that was in La Reserva, but anyway, it's obviously contributing to here, and many other little ones. So that budget is a chunky bit of money which is used. I must confess, I am very surprised, often surprised by particularly Americans coming over and saying how cheap that is, how inexpensive it could be, where in America that number would be much higher. I can't say yes or no because I don't know, but the fact is they are surprised. And whenever I talk about this with people, they say to me, why don't they double it? Because with double the money, you could have so much more effort put into keeping the what I call the visible things much better. The gardening, the sidewalks, and all of that. And then you have other things which I think are just general, simple things that you could improve. For example, when you drive around at night, the lighting here, although it's part of the remit of the EUC to keep the lights, street lights, I mean, it's all very dark. And wouldn't it be nice, as in other resorts I've visited, again in America maybe, where every villa must have their street light on, even though whether you're here or not. And that's not an expensive thing to do, because with solar energy as we have, if you look at anything new that's going up in terms of lighting, there is a little solar panel, which is, the energy for that. So that is, I don't know, 100 euros a villa, something like that. I mean, I really don't know the cost, but it's not going to break the bank with anybody, I would suggest. Another little thing that we could improve is as you drive along Paseo del Parque or some of the streets, the little doors that they have there where the water and the electricity all goes into the house, those are always often damaged and they're hanging off the hinges. We don't need that. That is so simple to fix, and it's very cosmetic. And things that really, really don't cost that much money. It's a question of effort and trying to get people to, do that. And I say this because, the one thing that everybody has in common in Sotogrande is the will and the want to have their value of their property keep high and keep growing. And that will only happen if the demand for the place is high. And what we don't want is my buddy who came from America to come and tell me, this place doesn't look as well kept as it should, and therefore he would, rather not buy here and buy somewhere else. That is very disappointing. So there we are. I'm not trying to be negative here, because if I go through the enormous amount of work that's done by the EUC, I can see how there are priorities, obviously, and security is important. It's one of the first things that people mention to me. And when you look at the numbers of bad things that happen here, it's obvious the security here is very good, because we don't have the issues that we see elsewhere along the coast. So security is very good. We've got access points, we've got the barriers, we have the cars driving around the place. You feel you don't have to look over your shoulder. You feel that your kids go on the bicycle out, and that's a very, very good thing. The maintenance of the roads, generally speaking, we always see there's work going on. Recently we've seen these beautiful black streets with beautiful white lines because they've been retarmacked and repainted. So that's fantastic. I have a knock. My thing is on the street lighting. I think that could be improved. But again, I know it's expenditure and it's a priority thing, and maybe that's one thing that we can do at another time. The common areas and landscaping and gardening, it's nice. I live here. It's wonderful. But by comparison to places elsewhere, maybe in America particularly, it's not where it should be. Having said that, it's probably better than any other urbanization we have along the coast here in any case. We have another thing that the EUC looks after is the drainage and the storm water. And there was an incident a couple of years ago, maybe a bit more now, where one of the roads were washed away. That was an interesting period, because there was a huge debate as to who looked after the road, who had to pay for the repairs, and it wasn't very clear whether it was a town hall or the EUC at all. So I know there was a bit of a debate going on there. So important. Insurance, okay, third-party liabilities on the streets. There must be an element of insurance there as well involved. Anyway, there's a lot there going on, a lot where Sotogrande is significantly better than anything we see along the coast, and that no reason though not to keep looking and keep trying. So just in conclusion, I think that the EUC is doing essential work with the lightings, the roads, the security, but as Sotogrande becomes more international and premium, the question is no longer just, are we maintaining the resort? The question is, are we elevating the resort, and are we designing a world-class environment that matches the villas that people are living in? I'll leave that thought with you.